Everyone, and welcome to Illimitable Living, the show that goes where others won't, to bring you the discussions we all need to hear so that you can have the discussions yourself that you really need to have. Today, I am speaking with Anjii Bryers. Now, you remember Anjii, a few weeks ago, we had a great chat about healing the horses. A remarkable lady who's a hypnotherapist and also a biofield therapist. Make sure I get that right. But of course, she's got many talents. But I wanted to bring her back because, as you would all remember, we forgot to finish the story. Plus, we've got a lot more to talk about as well. G'day, Anjii. Great to have you on board again.
Hi, how are you?
Always good and always a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Thank you.
So, okay, let's put everybody out of their misery. Let's get back to Crazy Horse.
Okay. We started off the story in brief. We started off the story, you were asking me how I ended up going to work with horses directly.
Yeah.
And I had called my son and said that I'd had a dream, and the dream had told me that I was leaving emergency services and I was going to heal horses. And he said, what kind of horses? And I said, like mad, crazy horses. Like, they showed me this horse with, its eyes rolling its head and it's foaming and of course, I got to meet that horse about a year later. And so I was at the racing stables, and the trainer was walking past. I was there to work on another horse. The trainer was walking past and was terribly upset. And I sort of said, hey. And she said, oh, the jockey jumped off the horse and said the horse was freaking crazy, and everyone, they've made me take him off the field, and oh my God, I don't know. And I said, do you want me to go and, do something with him? And she said, yep, go hard.
That's
right. So I went round
Yep.
to the horse, and the horse was standing there tied up, and he was so stressed out that he his muscles were so tight and his legs were pulled in like this, and he was just foamed all up, foaming from the mouth. His eyes were rolling and he was throwing his head back and forth, and I'm there like, oh, that's the dream.
Awesome.
And so I went and stood with him. So I'd worked with him once before. I'd been actually at their stables working on another horse and met him there. And so I talked to him, and I just in my head, like I was just standing there patting him and kind of talking quietly, I guess. And I was saying, what's going on? You do this every day. Like you come here every day, you do this every day, you have the same jockey every day. There's something going on, and this could cost you like really, really dearly. And because, basically if the horse is not running well, he's then removed from racing and hopefully can find a good home. But if he's sort of turned a bit nasty, they have to do other things with them.
Yep.
So, and then I just heard the story. So what happens with biofield energy, as we talked about, what comes out of you and emanates out of you mixes with what's around you, right?
Yes.
And so you're actually, when people are receiving messages, they're saying, I don't know where it came from. I just kind of knew stuff and or I saw pictures, and that's exactly what it is. So this horse basically had this conversation with me, and he said, well, it's her. It's her. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, we come down here every day, and at 6:30 comes, puts me out of the paddock, and then she's always stressed. I'm always kind of like, by the time I get here, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do anything wrong. I don't know what's going on. And he said, so this morning she arrived, and right from when she was walking out there, she was just like a ball of stress.
This is the jockey, or is it the handler?
The trainer.
Right. Yep.
And when she got me out of the paddock, she was like extremely stressed. And as a horse, it's like, well, if you're stressed and you're in charge, then I should be freaking stressed, right? And anxious. I don't know what are we? Is it a plastic bag? Is it a wolf? What are we doing? And then getting me on there. And he said, by the time we got here, she's just so. And he said, I just don't know what's going on. I'm freaking out, And so I explained to him. I said, well, this is your maiden run, and she's really excited for you, but she gets really scared because she's a human, and you know, humans are not as strong as you. So what we need to do is we need to just understand that she's her, and this is you and me. And the horse is like, but why is she like that? I'm like, I don't know. Humans are just
weird.
Yeah. And so I said, so you know what? I want you to rethink this. So just calm the farm. And when your jockey comes over, just greet her nicely. Just put on your back and just imagine that you're going out for a Saturday gallop and it's just fun and it's a beautiful morning and the horse is like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's all it is. And I said, do you want me to keep away from you? And he's like, yeah, thanks. Okay. So I'm doing this, and this horse was visibly calming.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what they'd done at the race course was the stewards had sent their blokiest bloke over to go and pull this horse out and make a decision, right? So the horse was either never ever going to run again, and anyway, so I'm with this horse, and then I hear this voice behind me going, "Are you fucking kidding me? Are you for real? Are you talking to that horse?"
Awesome.
And I looked around and I said, "Oh, yeah, we're just having a bit of conversation." He said, "Well, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, I never would have believed it." He said, "I've seen that horse in 5 minutes going from one that we're going to shoot to one that I'm going to let back on the course." He says, "You reckon he's going to run all right?" And I went, Yep. And he said, "All right." So he made the decision. So I calmed the horse. I left. I went and got the trainer and I said, "You are not to go near him." So I made her stand two walls of things back. As the jockey hopped on, the jockey just hopped on and the horse was like, walking out like it was a Saturday morning, and we watched him walk. And so then I was talking to her and I said, so what do you think his problem is? And she's like, "Me?" And I'm like, "You got it, right? That could have cost your horse its life. So you need to change the way you walk in your world with your animals." So then I took her up to the race viewing room and we watched him on the big screen.
Yep.
And he went and rode and did amazingly well, did a beautiful, beautiful run. And so that was that crazy horse that I was like, oh my God, so if I'm going to go and work for horses, they might kill me. But he was just like so ready to let go of his stress. He just needed someone to step in and kind of make it clear to him, you know, there's no wolves, there's nothing to fear. And you need to sort of start ignoring her fear. So yeah, that was a beautiful day.
And how did the owner react to that? Because I'm assuming the owner probably wasn't really all that, shall we say, on board with
the trainer. Look, the trainer, I think, tried. You know, probably had lots of other things going on in life and things like that. And you know, I hope the trainer gets to a point in her life that she goes and heals her own fears, you know, doing things like this. Because, you know, if you have no communication, or if your communication with an animal is extreme fear, yeah, and extreme, you know, behavior in other ways, then the animal's going to react to it. So you take, for example, dogs that know people, right? And dogs that, you know, I've always trusted if my dog doesn't like someone, I take note, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to go to a bikie house once, and I knocked on the door and he opened the door and he said, "What are you doing at my house?" And I said, "Well, here's the situation." And he said, "How did you get past my Rottweiler?" And I said, "Well, he came at me over the fence." And so I went back at him, and then he just sat down. I told him to sit down, and here he is. And the dog's like standing next to me going, yeah, "Hey, Daddy." Yeah. And, you know, we all have this ability. You read stories about the woman that met the bear in the forest, and the bear's like this. And she's like, all she thought to do was go to YouTube and put on some AC/DC song or something and played that to the bear. and the bear let go, you know.
Well, obviously the bear's got some bloody good taste in music, for starters. Look,
Yeah, it's even,
this is an interesting thing because the way I have always seen it, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is a lot of animals, particularly in domestic situations, obviously outside of domestic situations or outside of the influence of human behavior,
yeah,
animals are animals, right? But inside that, they tend to adopt human behaviors, human traits, particularly human stress and anxiety. And particularly with a lot of animals, there's this hierarchical, we call it the wolf pack aspect. So obviously there's something going on for horses there as well. So they look at they look for the boss. And just like kids do, particularly when they're little, if the parent's okay, if the parents, even in highly heated situations and everything like that, and I've been in some of these situations myself where I've remained extraordinarily calm. And everybody around me is just sort of looking at me thinking, what on earth is he doing? Why? How is he so calm? This is a really bad situation. And the reason why I stay calm is for two reasons. One, it fundamentally changes the energy of the space you're in and gives everybody an opportunity to be able to think and breathe and all that sort of stuff. But more to the point, people look to people, in this case myself, as to how he is reacting is how I should react. So kids particularly, they always look to the parents. And if you've got a highly anxious or stressed out mother or father and they're flying off the absolute handle at something, the kids are going to get really stressed and anxious and want to get flying off the handle too. I often find with a lot of animals, particularly animals that are in that stressed kind of human state, the issue isn't so much mimicking the behavior. It's more about lack of communication. They get frustrated because they can't communicate, and more to the point that the stupid human is not actually listening. Do you find a lot of your work is actually about listening?
I would say that 90% of my work is going to, I'm often the last call before a bullet for a horse or a dump at the pound for a dog. And, tending to observe. So, it's almost like I often look at the nanny thing in England, where she goes around and looks at these families and like, oh my God, sees the dynamic.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Her name was Jo or something, wasn't it?
It's so true, yeah.
Yeah.
And, like there was a horse called Madison and her owner contacted me, and when I went out to meet them, the owner had like bite marks and bruises all over her, and she'd had this horse from a foal. She's had horses for 20 years. Right. And this horse was doing that. So I said, oh, well, let's go down and get out of the paddock. And so I'm just quietly observing. I'm not doing that. Okay, so, I'm the big teacher, but I'm just quietly observing. Yeah. And I noticed that, she gets the horse and she's talking to me, and then she gets the gate and the horse gets through first. And then we get up there and the horse is pretty much leading the way. But even when she's haltering her, she's sort of talking. And so what happens with a horse? So this is how animals communicate, and dogs do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So a horse, what I ended up explaining to this owner, so I took some videos and things, and what I ended up explaining to her is that your horse doesn't ask you just once, so who's in charge, you or me? Your horse asks you multiple times every single day, right? And when your horse steps up into you, if you step back, you've actually told the horse that they're in charge. Yeah. So suddenly they're on high alert, So in a herd situation, you always have one that'll sleep and then one that'll watch out, right? Yeah. And so they have these dynamics, and this is how they ask. And, the multiple times that this person has sort of stepped back because they're busy having conversation or something. And so the horse going, okay, all right, so I'm in charge. And then going up a bit further, it's like, so I'm in charge. Oh, yep, okay, I'm in charge. So by the time you even get up and get them saddled up or on the harness, that you've told the horse multiple times that it's in charge, right? Yeah. So it's on high alert. And then all of a sudden, you've got it on a long rope and you're trying to tell it what to do. And it's going, oh, my God, what is the matter with you? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they get confused because they're getting mixed signals all the time.
Yeah. I'm either in charge or I'm not. But you're telling me I'm in charge, and then you're trying to do this, and I don't think it's what we should be doing. And so they have these arguments, and then she's got on the lead rope. And when you're running a horse, around in the circle. I've forgotten what it's called. I've got chemo brain. But you have to stand, so there's the center of the horse there, right?
Yes.
And you, even just by moving your feet, you are pointing to their rear, and that actually pushes a horse, right? Because even in the wild, just a turn of the head or a thing like this, even with dogs, will push them forward or push them back.
Yeah.
So she's standing there leaning to the front of the horse, and trying to push it that way, and the horse is going, ah.
Yeah.
And so it was simply by, when you're here, turn your feet, you see how this is working, see in the video how you're giving two totally different commands. And this is why the horse is rearing and going, I can't go forward, I can't go back. So it was again about connecting. It was again about being in the room, being connecting to that animal and being very smart about everything that you're doing, because to them, a lot of our language, I've got yelly dogs.
Oh, that's all good. It's all good. I use a water sprayer to train the cats. It's very efficient.
I've got a little Pomeranian that likes to think that every car that's going past is coming in.
Awesome.
So so many times it's this, and so I was able to work with this owner, and the horses come back amazingly. Like this horse is now jumping. So the first thing we did after that was we took her to a meet where they're jumping in the ring and she said, we were parking, we'll park away, and I'm like, no, we're going to go park right up by the doorway in, so all the horses come past, and we're going to, that's where, and she's like, and we did that, and we took it down, and then she hopped on it in the practice ring with other horses, and of course, sort of her fear again coming through. Oh God, I hope this is all right. The horse reared, threw her off, and was just galloping through these people, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is not something that I recommend to people, but nothing was going well. Yeah. And I ended up, I sort of just went and stood and as you do, I just held that energy, and I just looked that horse straight in the eye from 100 meters away, and just held the energy, and the horse came in, right? Nice. And stopped. And so this is just such a great key thing for people, that you are what they feel. You are the communicator. This horse is amazing now. Like, she's never had incidents since, and she's changed the way that she works with her horse, and they're best friends now. They're winning lots of things and
That's
doing
great.
really well. Yeah,
that's really good. You know what? That reminds me of a time when I had the farm. We ran 25 head of cattle. They were beef cattle, a bit of a mixed breed, some Hereford, some Angus, a few Baldies, a couple of Chevrolets. Anyway, I rented a bull because I didn't want to have my own bull. So I rented a bull, and I called him.
You were a no bull man.
Yeah. Well, so this is the interesting thing, because I figured out the way that the cows are naturally, they know you're the boss. For cows, because it's pretty quick for them, but the bulls, it's a very, very different thing. So we got this beautiful Charolais bull. He weighed in at about 950 kilos, so he's just short of a ton. He was a big lad. He was this big, beautiful white thing. Charolais had the little curly top knot, muscle on muscle, not the type of boy that you really want to mess with for a second.
Right.
I remember the day we got him off the truck and put him in the paddock, and all the girls completely unashamedly ran from the top of the paddock all the way down the hill to dance around him and greet him, and it was shameful, to say the least. None of these ladies were playing hard to get at all. Anyway, one day he actually broke through one of my weak fences. I had a weak fence out the back, and he got through the weak fence, and I had to go and round him up. So I think I had one of my boys, and I had Michelle in the truck, and I hopped out of the truck with this bull and started walking towards him. And I was probably getting to a point of being maybe 20, maybe 30 meters away. So about, 60, 80 foot. And he started snorting, putting his face in the dirt, dirtying up his head, started stomping his foot. He got his cock out. So it got right out as well. He was really wanting to threaten me with that too. And, fair enough too. That thing was like a baseball bat. But
That's a real threat.
it is absolutely. He was really worked up, and he wasn't having a bar of me for 1 second. And I can remember hearing one of the boys saying, "Dad, you don't want to go near that. Dad, don't." And I said, "Look, don't worry, I've got this." And I just walked straight up to this bull, and he started thing, and I just sat down and I said, "Dirt, put it away, mate. Put it away. I'm not having any of that. You're not coming out here swinging around that at me, young man." I said, "Stop rubbing your face in the dirt and pull your head in, will you?" Anyway, Michelle is obviously thinking, "Oh God, we're going to need to get a shovel or something. We're going to have to scrape Andrew up off the paddock floor after he gets completely trounced by this ton-heavy bull." But the strange thing was just my body language, the volume of my voice, the directness, looking him dead in the eye, not having a bar of it or anything like that. And he outweighed me, 15 to 1, easy. But sure enough, slowly, his big penis slowly started to retract. He stopped stomping his foot. He calmed down. And he ended up by just lowering his head and just softening and stuff like that and going, "Oh, okay, where am I supposed to go?" And I said, "Right, you go back up, the way you came, thank you, young man." And sure enough, he trotted up and he jumped the fence where he'd sort of kind of broken through. And anyway, it was a very interesting lesson for me, and more so for Michelle and the boys, because there's no way in the world they would have even attempted to do that. But it's all about showing who's boss, because you're right, they're constantly asking the question, "Are you my boss today? Are you my boss today?"
Yeah.
So yes, I am your boss today.
Yeah.
Look, and in a lot of aspects, I think they feel safer, more comfortable, reassured.
Absolutely, they feel an immense amount of relief. Like a lot of anxious dogs that I treat, and the dog's the first thing that answers the door, and he's going off and off and off. Like my little ones are having a crack at doing. So my ones were getting pretty good, and then I let it lax for a little bit, and so they've taken a mile, right?
Yeah.
But yes, dogs will do that. So when I'm teaching people that what's wrong with your dog is it's actually so freaking anxious because it's always on high alert. It's like 24/7 on guard.
Fight or
So there's
flight,
a little
the whole
dog
time.
called Benji in Melbourne, and his owners were an elderly couple, and they sort of said to me, they said, you do something with dogs or something? I'm like, yeah. And they said, look, we finally saved up to go and see our son for 3 weeks up in Queensland, and it's a lifetime visit for us. They're on a pension, and they said it's next week, and we had someone that was going to have Benji for 3 weeks, but now they've come back and said, well, you're going to have to pay me $30 a day, and they said we don't know what to do. And I said, I'll have him. And they said, look, he's a bit of a handful, and they came over, and he's he's a wild little beastie, and so I was like, oh, rightio. And so when they came back within the 3 weeks, he was walking on a soft leash. He wasn't yelling and barking. He didn't answer the door first. And so then I've been able to teach them that and explaining to them that he was always so highly stressed because you always tell him that he's on guard duty and he's trying to keep you safe all the time, even when you're asleep. Like, when they're asleep, they hear a noise and he's up and off. And he's the cutest little fellow now. Every time I go down there, they just say Angie's coming, and he literally starts crying. And I arrive there and he just lays on the floor and says,
Oh, that's cute. He probably feels so much better for it all too.
Oh, absolutely. And it's about, so I think if people study pack mentality, so pack mentality, for example, is that what I call the queen bitch. If another dog's done something wrong, it will be sent to Coventry, right, for a couple of days. It's not allowed to eat. If it is, it's just the very, very scraps. And then she will get one of the lower ranked ones that they can go and say good cop, bad cop. They'll go and just, keep it safe, and then gradually be back in. And, then at some point it's just like a look from her head, and the dog can come and feed again. And this is how it works with us. So the dogs always look into that. And when you feed the dog first, then the dog's like, oh, okay, I'm king bitch. Okay, right. And if you're feeding him off your plate, it's like, right, do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
There's these very subtle little things that absolutely affect a dog's behavior and find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dogs sent to the pound simply because they're a good dog, but because people cannot communicate. And I believe that, you know, all people before they adopt or buy dogs should do classes. You know, things are really cute when they're a little puppy.
Yep.
6 months later, they all end up at the pound because they're out of control.
I completely agree. And look, you know, I've owned dogs. I've had, you know, border collies and stuff like that before. And I was always adamant about the fact that they needed to be very, very well trained.
Yeah.
You know, even Sarah, who, you know, again, she thought she was a farm dog, but she really was a princess. She loved her food, but she always had to sit and wait for her dinner.
Yep.
You know, even when we put it on the ground and stuff like that, she wasn't allowed to touch that until she was given the go ahead. So even though we had an extraordinary relationship, she knew who was boss, and she needed to know who was boss as well.
Absolutely. It actually gives them peace of mind. They sleep better. They calm more. And you know, it's like my little ones now. This little Pomeranian who's sort of suddenly decided she got away with it, you know, once or twice. So now she's going to keep going. It's like I have to now be stronger with her, right? And I don't know. There's a great thing on YouTube of this. It's a Labrador, and she's got all these pups, and she goes into the pup room, and all these pups are like climbing over it, and she just barks, and she gets each one of them, and then these like 12 pups or whatever all end up sitting down, you know, and she's there, and she's like, and then one of them gets up, she's you will sit down till I say you can stand up, and it's a great lesson for us, because that's exactly what a mother does, and a mother teaches the puppies social skills, right?
Yep.
So when we're taking puppies off at 8 weeks, and often it's 7 because the breeder just wants them out, they haven't learned these social skills. So if you left puppies with a mother until they're 12 weeks old, she would literally toilet train them on everything that they need to do for behaviors. And so this is another issue, you know, puppies being taken from their mother way, way too early.
Kittens are the same. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, we've just recently brought into the house 2 young Maine Coon kittens, and remarkable creatures, and they're 3 months apart. Both of them are sisters, different mothers, same father. Anyway, we pick them up at 12 weeks, and they're already socialised, and they're already, you know, trained and all that sort of stuff and everything like that, and they get on like a house on fire now, which is fabulous.
Cool. So you understand what I'm talking about?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah, absolutely do. So, okay. So then, for the sake of all the listeners, because, look, Anjii, I totally get you. I get what you do. I understand how it works, perhaps in a cruder sense, not in the level of detail, obviously, that you as the expert does. So I just want to clarify that. How does this work? This whole communicating with animals stuff. Now, I know how it works, but what I want to do is I want you to explain it to the listeners.
Sure.
Because I think it's really, really important, because I know a lot of people are probably sitting, you know, maybe a bit skeptical. They're probably sitting there thinking, okay, is this like Prince Charles talking to his plants? I mean, really, are we all losing our minds here? So tell me, how does this actually work?
Okay, so look, a great description of this is a story I've got about a racing stable that I worked in while I was up in Tamworth. So I was deployed up to Tamworth, and while I was there, I did some work with a racing stable, and it was Craig Martin Racing, and he accepted me in to do this because he was just interested in what it was. So he's like, oh, yeah, I have a look, and I said, well, you know, if it doesn't work, you'll certainly be honest with me. And he goes, oh yeah, he said, you'll never work again. Don't worry about that. It's a really small industry, which is great.
Yeah.
And so I worked with his horses, and so one thing you learn as you develop is that you have to say messages as they are, right? You have to be very clear in your repeating of a message, because it can be taken wrong, right? So, okay, so I'm working with his horses, and he's there, and he's a really, really good man. He's like old school, of the earth, you know, black is black and white is white, and so I get there at like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and I work with all of the horses that I was working with, and I sort of had some messages to tell him from a couple of them, and I was a bit concerned inside at what these messages were, but I have to say it as it is, and I have to, it's an integrity thing with the animal that's communicating with you, right? So I went up to him and he's reading his racing guide and having his coffee with his glasses on, and I said, okay. I said, so I'll just give you a rundown on the horses, and he's like, yeah, cool. And I said, okay, well, so she said that she has sore feet, and he goes, sore feet. Okay, so you know they're hooves, don't you? And I said, yes, I know they're hooves, but she called them feet, right? I have to say it as it is. Remember, I'm just the messenger, okay? So don't shoot me. And he's like, right? And I said, yeah. So she says that every time she comes off the track after training, her feet ache for about 2 hours. And, that's her message for you. And he's like, right, okay. And so the message coming was the worst one. Yep. Anyway, I spoke about my conversations with the rest of them. Everyone was pretty cool.
Yep.
And by the way, some horses love to run. They love to race.
Yeah.
And so I had to get to this final horse, and he's what's called a horse that's gone sour, right? A sour horse. And he was one that was, he was just standing at the back of a stable all the time. He was biting and nipping. He was just, like real cranky pants. And I said, so look, he just keeps saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And Craig's like, right? And I said, yeah, he thinks he's going to get his head chopped off. Craig's like, oh my God, what? And I said, look, he shows this picture, like I see this picture, and his body's here, and his head and neck's there, and it's separated from his body, and he's so sorry. And he was sorry that he wasn't running well, actually, and he was stressed. But so Craig just goes, right, thank you, and he just looked away from me and went back to his racing guy and his coffee, right, and I'm standing there just going, oh my God, he's going to kick me out of his stables, right?
It wasn't that though, was it? I know what it was. Go on.
So I left there and I went and did my day's work with the emergency services. And so when they train racehorses, they do a morning training, and then they then have a rest, and then they do some afternoon training, and they finish at about 4. So all the trainers and that then leave and go home for the night, once the horses are fed and bedded. And so I'm arriving back at the race course at like 8 o'clock at night, and it's very still and dark, and all you can hear is the foxes and I go through, and I'm driving through, and there in front of his stable is Craig Martin's car, and I'm like, oh, he's here to just smash me and get his keys back and tell me I'm a loony. So I mentally prepared, and I got out of the car and I went into the stable, and he was sitting down, in the light having a beer and reading the race guide or whatever it was. So I walked in and I said hi, and he's like, hi. Awkward silence, and then he says, have a beer, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm just waiting for him to absolutely lose it at me and say, okay, I need the keys and you need to go. And he said, no, have a beer, and I'm like, yeah, okay, go. So I have a beer, and he says, look, come over here, and we pop our heads over the top of her stable, the mare's stable. And so they have these big water bins, right? And they're made of steel. And her one had been bent from her sitting on it, right, at the front. And he said, so after you left today, I was just sitting there thinking, what a loony, like you're just an idiot, right? He said, I was laughing at you. And he said, but then when she came in off the track, he said, I thought I'd just sort of have a peek over and see what she's doing. And he said, so I had a look over, and there she was. She'd backed her bum into the big water trough, and she was sitting on it, like she'd set her bum on top of it, and she was lifting up her legs,
To take the weight off the legs.
to take the weight off the legs. And he said, so my issue has been that horses must drink 20 or 40 litres of water a day, racehorses, to get through. And he said, if they don't, it's a very dangerous thing for them to not be drinking that water. But he said she's been pooing in her water and it's been driving me nuts. And, I had to keep coming and cleaning out her water and, putting back at night, make sure it's clean enough for her to drink through the night. And he said, so now I know why she's pooing in it. And he said, I sort of looked at her doing that, and he said, I called the vet, and the vet came out, and we took an X-ray, and we're actually going to operate tomorrow. And I was like, oh, that's good. Sure. And and then he said, and this other horse, he said, I always talk to my horse. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, at the end of training today, he said, fed them all, bedded up, everything was good. I was set to go. And he said, so I'm just walking around having a little conversation with each of them. And he said, I come to old Sourpuss over here. And he said, I walked past him, and he said, I have this joke. So this joke is that, the north of Queensland, we've got Cairns, right? Mm-hmm. Holiday resort. And he said, but what happens to horses is that, they can be made into horse meat and put into cans, right? Dog food cans. Yep. So he said, my joke is, he said, I walked past him and I walked past and I went, and you don't pick up your game, mate. You'll be taking a little trip to Cairns. And he said, I walked off, and he said, I'm chuckling away to myself. And I'm like, and he said, and then I just stopped dead in my tracks. And he said, I realized that this horse has seen what I'm saying to him. And this horse believes that I am going to chop his head off. And this horse has communicated that then to you, to tell you that he knows that I'm going to chop his head off, right? And he said, I've actually spent the last few hours here apologizing to him. He said, I'm devastated. And he said, this has changed my life. He said, on some level I knew this, right? On some level I knew this communication, or I wouldn't talk to my horses. And he said, it's just amazing to see how clear it is. And so this horse went on. So, he'd spent the whole afternoon, like up until 8 o'clock that night, just trying to communicate with this horse and say how sorry he is and that he actually thinks he's a grand dude and all this sort of thing. And the horse got up and ran really well for the next races. So, there's an amazing conversation that we had, and that was about, so how do you see it? And I said, I see it the same way you do. You get a picture, like you just know when you're bringing a horse out of a stall how he's feeling. He's a bit exhausted today. Now, you weren't here overnight, but he's just had a frustrating night. There might have been, rats running along the rafters or foxes outside, or the barn cats chasing things and stuff like that. But I said, you know inside, right, where they're at. You know when a horse is tired of racing. You know when a horse is excited about racing, right? Yep. You watch Sorcha Rose. She goes out there and she's a mare, and on race day she's like this, and she gets out there and she's like huffing at all the horses, and she'll see horses that she's raced before. And I said, that she's having a conversation with them because you guys talk about it. She's yeah, I'm gonna beat you this time, and she will not lose. Like, she'll have days where she'll just go out there and she's so determined to beat that horse that was an a-hole last time, and she'll win that race, right? And I said, so you have these conversations all the time. The only difference between you and me is that I've been able to pull away the veils of fears, or thinking that I don't know what I'm talking about, or thinking that it's my imagination, or that I'm crazy. And once you pull them off and heal your own body of your own trauma and your own past and things, you actually become what they call a clear vessel, right? So even Jesus talks about this, okay? Clearing the vessel and the way, and then the light just comes in. So you don't need to really train for years and years and years to communicate with animals. You actually just need to clear all the crap off yourself, and you'll actually hear it. So you all hear it now, but you can hear it stronger.
Yeah.
And what I love to do is work with people to just clear these fears and things away, and then they actually naturally start hearing. And with people like racing trainers and things, and people like this that are interested in their animals and love their animals and have the great love, that's 90% of the communication.
Mm.
Okay, so yeah, and it's just about doing it more. You've done it on your farm multiple times.
Yeah.
With your bull, right?
Mm.
Your bull was just so clear. There was no fear in front of you. So that wasn't jangling in front of you, which is what he's used to, right?
Yeah.
I put my ears this way and the human runs, and then I get to laugh like, yeah, run, little man, run.
Yeah.
But then there's this man standing his ground. So I'll stop. No fear. And then I'll see the pictures of this man saying, put it away, pick up your nose, 2 eyes on, right? Come on, not for you. Oh, okay. So you're absolutely doing it. And by removing that fear, you are a clear vessel, right? And I imagine that the work that you've done in your life has made you a clear vessel anyway.
Yeah, look, it certainly has. And it wasn't until I actually started emptying this vessel of all of my troubles and all of my past and all of my shit and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I did that all of this started to happen for me.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is of course, we give labels to things. Humans do it all the time. And there are spiritualists use labels to describe what we're describing. And they're labels like clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, claircognizance, right? Yeah. Now, I'm a highly visual person. I've always been a highly visual person. For instance, when I create gardens, which is a passion of mine, and not just little suburban gardens, I mean gardens across acreage, like I did at the farm. So the garden that I built at the farm was 4.5 acres. So, I just, for me, visualizing the space, not just now or how I want it to be, but where it's going to be in 5 years and 10 years' time is incredibly easy for me. But I'm not, I see movie images behind my eyelids when I close my eyes and stuff like that, and I'm connecting through with things. Obviously, doing that with clients is a little weird because they think you've fallen asleep, and it's a little disrespectful. But other aspects of my work is I'm also very clairaudient, so I hear things, I hear voices, and I also am partially claircognizant. So you have this inner knowing, right? Some people are clairsentient, which of course is all about feeling and all that sort of stuff. And there's another one which I can never remember, which is all about smelling. So, for instance, I know when my grandfather's energy is nearby, when he wants to stop by and say hello, because I always smell the smell of cherry pipe tobacco, because it was what he used to smoke. And he's been dead for 25 odd years. So this sort of stuff is really interesting to me, because not only do all intuitive counselors ultimately counsel through their intuition, which is ultimately really what you're doing, but you're actually connecting, some would say your higher self is connecting with the horse's higher self and allowing that bridge to happen. Do you hear a physical voice as you hear mine now, or do you hear an altered voice like thoughts in your head? How does it work for you?
So I seem to have a variety of all of these. So I don't call myself anything.
No, sure. Well, neither do I. So I totally understand that. Yep.
Yeah, things just turn up. So the way I've come to, losing my cushion here. The way I've come to understand this from my own minuscule understanding is that all of this is just a deeper level of ourselves. So a physical outshowing of this is when you have someone that could see and then becomes blind, right? And then within 3 to 5 years, they can virtually, literally see so many things around them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In fact, sometimes they can even see better than we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will have deaf people that will turn their heads at a noise. So I believe that these people, because they're concentrating on that sense, and it becomes, and they're not so busy doing the physical, right? So we're not so busy listening to our conscious mind saying, oh, come on, no, it couldn't be that. You're just like cray cray. When we get that out of the way, which is what I'm talking about, these curtains, and we just stand there, it's like, oh, I can hear. So sometimes I will hear physical voices. I had a guy, a stranger, attack me, and on the Gold Coast when I was walking home from the corner store at 8 o'clock at night, and I literally was walking along, and I heard an absolute yell, and they yelled out my name, Anjii. And I looked and I turned around, and about 200 yards back was this guy walking along the street. And then I knew that he was going to rape me. I knew exactly where he was going to do it, right? And so by the time he got up to me, all my warrior had come up, right?
Yeah, good.
And with my history, and you would understand this from trauma, is that one of the great things I learned was that a predator is not raping you because you're good looking or you're female, or it doesn't really matter. What it is about total disempowerment. So by the time this guy got up to me around the corner, and I knew that, you know, on the corner was a business building, then an alleyway, then another house, and then my house. And I had my bottle of milk there. And so by the time he got to me, I was walking around the corner, and I could feel him. Like literally the energies were helping me feel him. And he got up and he came around in front of me, and he asked me what the time is. And I just looked away because that's the first invite in, right? Once you connect to them, that's it. So I ignored him. And then he came at me, and I was ready for him. So knowing and having learned from trauma, which is why we're grateful for having trauma, right?
You're right, it is, absolutely.
So I didn't scream, I didn't cry, right? I was not fearful at all, because I knew that that's what he needed. That is where he gets the hit, is by disempowering me and hearing that fear, and that actually fills up his energy and makes him more repetitive. So what I did instead was, and I'm sure this was my ancestors stepping in here, and up came a voice out of me that I have only heard a couple of times in my life, and it was like a demon. And my eyes were rolling in my head like a crazed Maori warrior. And excuse me, listeners, but so this guy came up to me and he grabbed me, and I grabbed him back. And I pulled him into me. Instead of pushing away, I pulled him into me, and I went, "You picked the wrong bitch tonight. I'm going to fuck." So bad. And I started pulling him into this alleyway, right? And he went from being to, and then we got in there, and I'm holding him in, and I seem to have the strength of giants, right? I'm sure that there were beings around me, and I held him in there, and I'm like, this, and I saw a moment when that guy went from being predator and rapist to being whatever 6-year-old boy he was that was trying to get that power back. And I pulled him in, then I let him go a bit, right? And then just to be sure, I just pulled him back in, and then I let him go. Now this strength didn't come from me, right? You know, as a grown man. But as he ran away, I'm standing there going, oh. And I heard this ear-piercing scream. And it was he'd obviously undone his zip ready to go. And he was running off trying to zip up his pants. And he obviously got his man bits caught in there.
Right, that's called karma. That's what that is.
So I got home to my son, and I walked in, I'm laughing. And I said, oh, my God, the funniest thing happened. I was away. So yeah, sometimes you hear solid voices, and it's usually when it's absolutely necessary. Other times it's like a download. So other times, you know, you can just suddenly know something, right? You can just suddenly know that with this bull in front of me, I'm actually okay. And this is what he needs to hear.
Yep.
Right? Other times you will see pictures. So I'm working on a huge show jumping horse, and he's just been grumpy. So sometimes they're grumpy when they're coming out of their winter, but this horse was particularly grumpy, and so I went to treat him, and I'm feeling sick in my stomach, and I can see this like bright neon green stuff right sitting at the bottom of this dark bowl. This is the sort of the visual I'm getting in my head, and I'm saying, oh, it's like a tummy bug or something, like something in this tummy. And no, he's fine. I'm like, there's something in there. It's like like a bug, and she's going, no. And I said, has he been sick in the tummy at all? And she's going, oh yeah, he had some kind of food poisoning or staph or something. I can't remember what it was, but you know, it would have been like a month and a half or so before. And I said, look, there's just a little bit in there, and it's just enough to. And no. Anyway, and I'm working with this horse, and my hands are guided to go under his tummy, right? And I'm coming up here, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting the sensation that I need to do number 2, and I'm like, you want to go and get a shovel? And she's like, well, I said, just go and get a shovel. So she went and got the shovel, and I said, okay, just put it under his tail. And she's like, and anyway, his stomach starts gurgling and gurgling. And she puts it under there, and he lifts up this tail, and he does this poo, and freaking neon green.
Yeah, wow.
It was unbelievable. And so he just had a bit of that bug in there, need to get through, and he came good. And so, you know, sometimes you'll get a sensation from your animal, or you know, the horse in Austria just very recently took a fall, right? So this is the horse that I've been working with for about a year, and with the sanctuary and the owners and the rest of the herd. And I am in my home here, and I suddenly get this absolute stabbing pain right behind my left eye, and it's just and I see the picture of Tessa, the horse, and I'm like, and I can kind of see her eye like bulging, and it feels to me like a blood clot or like something's really bad. And so I just quickly message her owner over there in Austria, and I say, urgent, go check on Tessa. And, you know, she goes down to the paddock, and Tessa had taken a fall earlier that morning. And she got up and she'd gone with the herd, but she gets down there, and the horse is there, and the eye is rolling, and it's looking bulgy, and the horse is like disoriented and trying to shake her head. And so she was able to work on her and bring this back. So you know, sometimes you'll feel the pain of the horse, right?
Yes.
But the difference, I think, for people, so the difference when you're feeling the pain of someone else, you know it's not your pain. And the only way I can kind of describe it is it's almost like if you could visualize pain, there's their jaw, and then in between that, it's almost like a layer of plastic, and then you. So you feel it, but it's not, you know, it's not dropping you on the ground, but you know it's a really interesting thing. So this, you know, this has obviously gone, you know, I don't know, 20,000 kilometers from me, right? And this horse has urgently contacted me to get her owner to run down and look after her. And so sometimes messages come that way to you. Sometimes you hear things. Sometimes it's like a download of information, you know, about an animal's history or what they're afraid of. You know, a little horse is showing, all I can see is a hand coming down, and the little horse doesn't know why or what it did, and now it's afraid of hands, so they have trouble catching this little pony, right? This freaking little thing, you know, it'll rear and buck and like just rip the lead out of people's hands. And I was just afraid of hands, so I was able to mix up a really wet mix, and just get all over my hands, and this licking and chewing, and bring it back to trusting and bringing in this love energy, and it was able to kind of come back from that, and okay, so that's not going to happen all the time. So you know, you hear things in different ways. It's something that we all do, and I think the easiest key for people is just to go back through and remember when they've had little things happen to them in their life, you know, little things that they just knew. Or, you know, Auntie Mary died, and wasn't it funny, I dreamt about Auntie Mary last night, and the phone rings this morning, and she's died, right? You know, she popped in to say goodbye to me. How nice of her, you know, saving me a flight overseas. That was really cool. And you know, with your animals, with your children, you just know something's wrong with your children. You know, I was in a meeting and left the meeting. I was a bit angry. And so what I'd done was I'd been given a project, and it was all good, but the woman who had gone into a new position, a couple above me, basically vetoed it because it came off my desk. And you know, when it's a life critical sort of project, it's kind of really. And so I've walked out of that meeting and the IT boys are walking with me and they're going, oh my God. I'm going, it's all good. Next thing my phone rings and it's my son from Queensland going, what's going on? Right? And the boys go, no way. That's unbelievable. It's like we all have this, right?
We do.
We all have it happen to us all of the time. And it's about knowing that we do. So the first key to doing this course for yourself is to notice that you do it. And then the next key is to acknowledge it and then notice it more. And then just start doing it. So I've learned to play the piano, right? Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for so long that I'm now playing Chopin rather well. And now I'm able to teach other people to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and then they will learn and practice, and that's all it is. So this energy, people call it Reiki energy, people call it pranic energy, Catholics call it God's energy. It doesn't matter what you call it. Some people call it higher self. It really doesn't matter.
I agree.
It's just energy, and it's just a deeper level of ourselves. So as I said last week, we have a voice. We learn to talk. Then once we've learned to talk, we learn that we can use this voice to yell or sing, and we develop this voice. And some of us become opera singers. Some of us become like me and really shouldn't have learned to sing in the first place, but we have these skills. And so working with this is actually nothing more than working deeper with yourself. And in order to do that, if you simply clear away your fears, first of all, if you're a skeptic, then I challenge you to proving that it doesn't work, right? And I challenge you to look back at your life. Go right back to when you're 3 if you have to. If you've been that closed off and told that you're silly for doing that all your life, then undo it. Talk to people, go onto YouTube, look at all of the people in the world that are having these amazing experiences, because we're in these days where we actually have to clear away these fears, because it takes our life, it creates cancer, it creates all of these things that then come in between. So if you can just clear that away, go back, look and see where you've done it, and just start observing. You know what, your plants will react to you. So I was in the office once, right? I had a one of the IT boys was saying to me, so this stuff you do, right? What is it? And I'm like, it's just working with energy that's around us. And he's like, yeah, a bit of hogwash to me. And he said, can you prove to me that it works? And I went, well, I don't know. It is what it is. And I had this plant that I'd saved from one of the finance managers, and he had this dead plant there. And I said, yeah, it's because you're mean to it, right? You keep calling it gay because it doesn't have flowers. So I said, we're doing an intervention. And so me and the IT boys, anyway, this plant started growing back, right? It was great.
Yeah.
And so I sat in there. So we're in an office. There's no open windows, no air conditioning around us. And I said, I want you to look at that plant. You see anything moving? And he said, no. And I said, well, just sit here with me for 5 minutes. And we just sat there, and I just sent energy, and I just emanated it out from me to this plant. And he's sitting there, and suddenly he's kind of like, and the plant's leaves started shimmering, and it was just shimmering with joy. And this guy's going, no way. And he's getting in closer, and he could see the leaves shimmering.
That's
and
awesome.
It's we all have this.
Yeah, we do. I completely agree. You know what? It's, just listening to your talk, listening to your stories, listening to what you're saying, it's popping up all of these little stories of my own, all over the place. And I think we could definitely do another episode about what I refer to as communication.
Beautiful.
People give it all sorts of different names and all that sort of stuff. And I'll save the juicy bits for our next discussion, because I think it's really important. In the greater scheme of things, you're right. We all have this available to us. Buddha talks about it. Jesus talked about it. Krishna, all of them, it's through all the ancient texts. The big difference is some of us are listening and most of us are not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As Wayne Dyer always says, we all have this available to us. The only difference is that I know it and you doubt it.
Absolutely. And so in closing, let me leave you with a little story about monkeys. Is that okay?
Oh, I'd love another good story about monkeys.
So it's not my story, but it's such a great example of how these communications work. So, and this was scientists that did this study. So they had these monkeys that lived on an island. There was nothing else except these monkeys and these other monkeys on other islands. So there was an island 30 kilometers away from here. And so what they did was they took one monkey off this island and they taught it how to wash the fruit, right? Because they'd all just eat it with the dirt thing. They taught it how to wash the fruit. And they went back, and I think it was something that within a day, all of the monkeys on that island were washing the fruit. And I think it was within 3 days, don't quote me on this, but it was like super, super close, that 30 kilometers away, all of the monkeys on that island were now washing their fruit.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And you know, of course, they made sure at first, you know, what are we going to give them that's a new skill that they don't have that will actually be useful to them? Okay, so first they have to observe that they don't do something, right? So that it couldn't be said, well, you know, one of them was washing them before that.
Yep.
And so, you know, without our intervention, animals communicate with each other. You know, that's why dogs bark all the way across. So when you leave home at the beginning of the day and go to work, your dog thinks that by barking it, he's guiding you home, which is what they do out in the thing. You know, they go over here, and then other dogs will relay messages. Yeah. And then when you get home, they go, yeah, worked. You know, you found your way home. So
that's it. You know what? This stuff is so fascinating to me, and I'm absolutely certain it's fascinating to the listeners as well. And I think this is part of these discussions. This is why I say that the show goes places where nobody else is going to go, because until we normalize this discussion, people aren't going to attach to it. They're not going to listen to it. You know, I think we all secretly know that there's more going on around the world, around us, in our lives and stuff like that than we really give credit for. And it's when we open our minds up. You know, I come across people all the time and they know something's wrong in their life because they're unhappy or they're unfulfilled and all this sort of stuff. They know that something's wrong, but they don't know what it is. And I say to them, forget goal setting, forget action taking, forget all of that sort of stuff. Yes. Leave that until when you're ready. The first thing we have to do is we have to recognize what's going on. If you don't recognize what's going on or recognize what the problem is, how can you possibly fix it?
Absolutely.
It'd be like going to a car that's broken down and stuff like that. Now, I would look at a car that's broken down and go, it's not working. But a mechanic goes through and tests all these different things and goes, right, there's the problem. Now I know what to fix. The human body is no different.
Yes, absolutely.
And once we recognize what's going on, then we need to reflect on what we want instead. So a lot of people recognize the fact that they're really unhappy. Yes. Because they're stuck in the wrong job or whatever. You know, all of these sort of things, these labels we give it, like jobs or partners or relationships or whatever, they're all just the labels that we give the problem. But once they recognize what the problem is, then they need to reflect on what they want instead. So if you don't want to be doing that job because it's making you unhappy, you know, what do you want to do?
Yes, absolutely. Look, we'll have to do a day session on, I've written a little book that I use for my clients because sometimes they're so used to a different way of doing therapy that, you know, I'm not for the faint-hearted, right?
Sure. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. So we can do one on what I call, it's a little story I've written that I give to people, and it's called The Pond of Poo.
Nice.
And in closing with what you're saying there, one of my most favorite sayings, and it's by a guy called Vernon Howard. He's a really interesting read. You'd absolutely love him. So Vernon Howard writes, "A man cannot know who he truly wants to be until he clearly sees who he no longer wishes to be." And that is a great thought to spend a whole week just thinking about that. You know, until I clearly see who I don't want to be, I'm not going to set my goals for the future. Right?
I completely agree. And I remember the big turnaround point for me was asking myself this big question, and I covered this off in a previous episode. I asked myself the question, who am I? And when I really started to answer that question, I realized I wasn't who I wanted to be. And so I suddenly started to realize what I didn't want to be, which then helped me define who I wanted to be. And I am now that man who I always wanted to be. I'm now the friend, the partner, the lover that I always wanted to be. I'm now the father that I always wanted to be. I'm now the successful, you know, business owner that I wanted to be. I'm now the person who helps people that I wanted to be. So you can ask that question over and over again about a whole range of different things. Even, you know, who do I want to be in this particular relationship with this particular woman or this particular man or this particular dog or, you know, all these sorts of things. It's such an important part of that self-analysis that I think is absolutely essential.
Absolutely.
You know what? It's always a pleasure. I would love to have you back on the show. Let's talk about that communication stuff that I mentioned. Let's get into all of that and explain how that works. Other people might call it automatic writing. Some people call it, channeling. Other people call it, a range of different things. Transmediumship. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. And in a large part, I know it plays the same role in your life, in everything that you do. So I think you'd be a perfect person to talk to our listeners about that as well.
Beautiful. Well, I'll send you across a little excerpt from a script that I was given over Christmas that seemed to come out of nowhere. So a whole film script was written in basically 3 days and 3 nights.
Wonderful.
And so that was the base script. And then about 4 weeks later, they said they're coming in again. And within 24 hours, that script had another 50 pages and basically I'm just typing what I'm told.
Fabulous.
So I'll send you a little bit that we can use on that one.
I'd like that. I'd really like that.
What messages they brought through.
Well, thank you again, Anjii. It's been an absolute pleasure. How do people get in contact with you?
Look, I'm anjieb@gmail.com. I live in Canberra, so I'm 2 doors down from the Canberra Psychic Centre with Nell Archer, and I've got my Anjii Bryers Biofield Facebook page and Anjii Bryers Biofield YouTube channel.
Now for everybody just who caught me in the first episode getting it completely wrong, I'm not going to get it wrong again. That Anjii Bryers, that's ANJII, surname Bryers, BRYERS. So just make sure you spell it correctly, otherwise the emails aren't going to get through. And look, you know what? Thank you again. Thanks to all the listeners for listening to Anjii and I having a great old chat again this week. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, Anjii. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And look, if anyone has any questions, please write into you and I can get in contact with you and answer them.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Have an absolute fabulous week. Take care.